Greetings everyone, welcome to this new video. Today I'm going to talk to you about Winter Orb and give you a run through what you should be looking for and what kind of Pantheons, skill tree and all that jazz that you need from a guide. It's not going to be super in-depth because that's going to take me an hour to just go through all the mechanics of it. You just need to trust me on some of these choices. I'm going to explain as much as I can though. You don't need any rares for this build at all, and if you're a little bit insecure because it got a nerf in 3.6, I'm here to set you at ease. It actually got a buff in the end because I'm sitting on 500k damage per projectile, and that is with shit gear. The new infused channeling and the skill tree clusters for channeling skills is just insane, and some new pathing options also. All of it added up to a quite significant buff for us. I use a life version and no crit because it's much easier to gear and it is cheap and effective. Everything turned out great here, so I highly recommend the way I'm building it, but you can build it however you want. There's crit versions of this, which you lose out some affixes of course, and the gear is much more expensive. There are also CI versions, energy shield versions, which I will try later on in the league when I have more currency. And I have down the Uber Elder, I just need him to spawn in the middle now. Shaper was super easy and everything is just even more easier than it was in 3.5. So just lean back and we're going to talk a little bit about this Winter Orb build. I'm going to talk to you about playstyle before we start with all the other important stuff. Mechanical wise, Winter Orb is super strong. It might not be the strongest boss killer, it might not be kicking ass on every front in this game, but mechanical wise this skill is amazing. What I mean by that is that if you bring up your stack, so you just channel it, which means you're holding down your mouse button or whatever key you're using, then you bring it up to stacks, 10 stacks or 12 stacks if you have the helmet shots. Then you can just run around, and things like increased duration on the tree or on different gear pieces can get you even longer duration of this. You basically just run from one side of the map to the other and just charge it up real fast. And faster or cost speed also helps you bring up those stacks first. So if you've seen my previous videos, it looks like I'm never stopping ever, and I don't need to get close, and I can only focus on not getting hit by bosses. All of this accumulate into incredible defense by just having to focus on dodging enemies and being at the right spot at the right time, which so many other spells cannot do because they need to shoot all the time. They need to stop, shoot, stop, shoot, stop, shoot. We don't need to do that. We just need to find a lull in the battle and just stand there and channel. You can also use a bunch of Val skills and stuff like that to help with a single target on bosses. I use Val Righteous Fire and Val Cold Snap for that. I'm going to talk more about that later. And otherwise, just go for high movement speed on this build. I don't use a movement skill at all, but you can, of course. But I just find it redundant when we have so much movement speed from Flasks and boots and stuff like that, and phase run. So that is the playstyle. Just charge up and run. For our gear choices, like I said, there's no mandatory uniques. There are some that I prefer, of course, and we're just going to take a look at my gear here. I just go for spell damage or cold damage in this case. You can search on it. I suggest that you put up live searches on all these items that you want. So a few at a time and just see if someone get one up, and I get these for like 10 chaos. Most of these, there's nothing real expensive in this build right now, so you don't need to spend a ton of money. The only thing expensive is this one that I just splurged on, but it's not such a great damage boost. Altogether, it's very cheap. So let's get to the gear then. You want a lot of cold damage here, percent cold damage that is. And you want cold damage to spells. Make sure it's cold damage to spells because the other ones do not affect your Winter Orb. And the same, we want life, resistances, and stuff like that. And again, increase cold damage, or it could be spell damage. Spell damage is probably better because it boosts all your spell damage. For our helm slot, I would go with a frigid fossil craft, which nearby enemies have minus 9% of cold resistance. And then, of course, you just want max life and some resistance and stuff like that. You might also want to go for the +2 Winter Orb stacks that you can have here, but it's very expensive, and that is a real late game boost. Like, it's 10% boost all over of our DPS, so it's quite big. Now the important part is my combo here. This is my preferred method in the beginning of the league because it's so much cheaper. So Comb's Heart gives us a great life pool here to work with. And I have pretty shit gear. I need to update my gear. So don't look at my health pool too strong. And I'm very low level. I'm only level 92. So what I do with this, if I have this Comb's Heart, I can go with the 6 link or improv 6 link on my gloves. Which means that if I have, as you can see here, we have a Socket support level 18 slower projectile and faster casting. And that gives us an improv 6 link because whatever you socket in here is going to be affected by those gems also. And also they give stats outside. So you can see that 7% cast speed and 20% increased projectile damage. Those are on top of the damage we already have. And we can craft +2 level socket projectile gem or AoE gem, or both if we multi-craft them, which is insane because every level you put on Winter Orb is one of the biggest boosts you can make. So highly recommend this setup to start out with, and then maybe you go for a Lore Weave and Impulsar or Carcass Jack, which got buffed also. So those are recommendations. Amulet, of course, Pandemonius is great. You have also Joke of the Suffering, but I don't know. Those are pretty expensive also. Otherwise, I just changed this one and I did Shaper without any of this special gear here that you see. So it's not needed. I would just go for a normal amulet, which gives a little bit of, I think, the spell damage or cold damage. Yeah, cold damage on it. My ring setup, normally I would go for Mark of the Shaper here, and it's super expensive right now. But I noticed a Circle of Fear, which is the new synthesis ring that you can get from the bosses in there, can have these effects. So if you look at my bottom ones there, it increased cold damage affected by Herald of Ice, and Herald of Ice has increased buff effect. You can get both of those stats, and those are insane damage boost. Of course, those gonna be very sought after, especially when I make this video now. And they were already before because people realizing this is probably better than Mark of the Shaper. Because Mark of the Shaper, you're bound to have an Elder Ring here, which we are using at the moment because curse enemies with level 8 Warlord's Mark on hit is very effective. Because the Blasphemy only gives a radius around us, but Warlord's Mark on hit can just, when the Winter Orb is tagging things outside basically the screen, it gets Warlord's Mark on them. And we don't need to reserve any mana, which leaves us room for other things like Aspect of the Spider on the belt that I crafted here. You can buy those beasts and do it yourself. They are very rippy though, so that boss, that spider boss, is so rippy. So you might be wasting a lot of currency unless you have a lot of chaos resistance. So I suggest that you pick up some chaos resistance before you do the Aspect of the Spider boss. Aspect of Spider is great, by the way. It's a must for this, and it's only 25. On the belt, otherwise, you want increased cold damage or increased elemental damage, which come from fossil crafting with, I don't know which one's fossils. It's frigid and perfect or something. I can't remember. And otherwise, we have just movement speed. Of course I need to update my boots here. That would be great. I just have them for resistances. And I think that is it. So again, you can do this build without any specific gear. You can run it with just normal, rare gear, and you'll be fine to a certain point. And you can basically do Shaper on 1 to 2 EX budget without any whatsoever problem. For our flasks, we're gonna take a look at these that I have here. These are my personal choices. I use these in 3.5 also. We have Life Flask. You want something to just top you off if someone is have put poison or you're standing in some shit, and you want bleeding on use on this because bleeding is a real killer for us, and you want something to take that off. So that is staunching on the flask. Please have this one. And then you also want Y-Soak is very good. It goes up to 15% of each element which are uncapped damage penetration, which means that if you're if you can take a look here, if you see my cold res, I'm so overcapped. If that is the highest, then I get the 14 to 15 or 14% penetration of that when I click that, and that is huge. Then I have Curse Immunity because I run a lot of Val Orbs on my map, which means that I've kind of Vulnerability and Feeble, and even worse, Temporal Chains. And if I click this flask, then we are not going to be affected by those, which means we can have maximum run speed and it's less rippy. So I highly recommend it with a Basalt Flask because we do not want to be hit by those pesky things that is in melee range. And at Zero Promise, Super Cheap Flask, we want to gain 15% of elemental damage. The other one we don't really care about. And it gives some extra chaos rest because we don't have much of that, and chaos damage leases life, so some extra life also. And finally, we want the Quicksilver Flask. We want the increased movement speed during flask effect mod, and then you can go for whatever you want. If you want the increased duration or the one increased charges and stuff like that, it's your choice. Other choices you can make is Dying Sun, which is quite expensive, or there's plenty of other flasks that you might want to go for, but these are the ones that I recommend. For jewels, you want to go for something with a increased maximum life percentage, or you want to go for flat, depending if you're going for a normal jewel or abyss jewel. These are the ones that I'm searching for at the moment. Is increased cold damage. The reason why it's pseudo here, because there's a lot of mods that affect this, so I just put it like this. And increased damage, projectile damage, there's some area damage and normal damage. These are really good. And then we have the Hypnotic Jewel, which can increase their flat damage. It got a slight nerf of the damage effectiveness of Winter Orb, but it's still insanely good. So if you can find something like this, but these are going to be super expensive, so I'm just searching on them in case there's someone putting them up for a decent price for an Exalted or something. So these are my jewels that I'm definitely going for. If you're running Combs Heart, then you definitely want to go for more percent increased damage. So you have some kind of synergy with a high life, flat life, and the percentage. If you go too high on one, there's diminishing returns. So this might be also a way to even that out. And also some if you need the stats, you can go for stats. If you need a resistance, then you have a great way to get resistances here too. So those are the things that I'm looking for. Let's talk about Gem and its links, because like I already said, I run an improv kind of 6-link here, but I'm gonna give you the full link setup right now. Normally, the ones you want definitely in your links with Winter Orb is, of course, Winter Orb, Greater Multiple Projectile, Hypothermia, and Infused Channeling. But Infused Channeling is great and everything, and it gives both such an insane boost to our damage, but it's only if you stand there and channel for a certain time. And here's where my biggest tip come in, because I did not find this good in the beginning. Because the higher the level you have on infused channeling and the more quality you have, the less time you need to channel for it to activate the buff. So if you have a level 21-20 like I have, then you're not going to need to channel it for more than half a second. And of course, you're going to channel that. But otherwise, you might need to channel it for almost 2 seconds. And that is not very effective when we are at the end game, because we're not going to stand still for that long, because our stacks are going to be up in 1 second anyway. So why would I stand there for an extra second then? Other gem links would be Controls Destruction. It's even, you can still make the cap if you have some pathing on the skill tree that gives you some extra critical strike chance. Other ones are Cold Pen. There's also Flat Cold. I need to do some testing with all of these, which one gives the most, but there's definitely going to be an update for that. And Concentrated Effect. I opted out of Concentrated Effect now to see if the overlapping of missiles, because when you shoot on the ground, the more area of effect you have, then you're gonna overlap with this damage with like shotgun effect, which means that you're gonna get hit by multiple projectiles at the same time, which is very good because that's doubling, tripling, quadrupling whatever damage there is. So those are my links set up for my Winter Orb. Other links set up which is really good is my Arcane Surge auto-proc system that I have. So Arcane Surge, if you use a certain amount of mana, Arcane Surge will hit, and it gives spell damage, increased cast speed, and maximum mana regeneration, which is super good because, yeah, there's a free boost, and it gives us a way to regain mana very fast when we are not using Warlord's Mark later on in this game. And I'm linking it with Phase Run, so level 20 Phase Run here. And it gives us also increased movement speed, 30%, and that is nothing to scoff about because we are going to run so fast. And increased duration also, because then Phase Run is going to go longer, Arcane Surge is going to longer, and also it's going to increase the mana cost on our Phase Run, which means it's going to proc our Arcane Surge much earlier. So those are my, so you might want also to think about not put your Arcane Surge to the max level, because that is going to increase the amount of mana, so you might want to stop leveling that gem at some point. Other setups that are super important is I use Val Cold Snap because it gives us some Frenzy Chargers, which is good all around, extra damage and some extra speed. Then we have Herald of Thunder connected with Onslaught. What it does is it's gonna proc our Onslaught for us, which is 20% movement speed and so on, and I think it's cast speed also. But it's gonna proc it automatically when you have it in that setup. So make sure they're linked. So Herald of Thunder and Onslaught is linked. Other ones is Val Righteous Fire. Make sure it's not the you don't pick the normal Righteous Fire, because plenty of people have died. It gives us a huge boost of spell damage. It's 37 or something like that, or 27, which is good on bosses. Frost Bomb is gonna, if you put it, it's gonna be minus 25 cold resistance on all the enemies. And the final one that we all, and Herald of Ice, of course, and when everyone is using Mortal Call and cost when damage taken, also don't level up these to max, because you want them to proc fairly often. And those are my gem setups. There's other ones you can go for. I know that other people are going for Val Vortex or Blade Vortex for bosses, but then I need to sacrifice a full 4 link to that, and I don't really want to do that, and I don't see the need for it when I can kill all the bosses in no time at all anyway. So and there's more buttons to push basically, so I don't opt for that. Aspect of the spider, I'm gonna put that here as a skill because it's such a great skill, because you get 15% if you have 3 stacks of spider web on them, which is gonna go on them automatically. You get 15% more damage. That is pure damage, not 15% increased damage. That is that they take 15% more damage, and the difference between that and normal stats, it's just, yeah, it's huge. And also they get slower and everything. So you definitely want aspect of spider on this. Something you want to think about also is quality everything up, because some of these have really good quality, like increased cold damage or something like that, and it's a great boost for almost no currency. And also winter orb should be 21. You should have a level 21 winter orb, because like I said before, winter orb scales in damage so much by levels. So it's a must if you want to optimize your gear or anything. That is the first purchase you should do right now, is level 21 winter orb. Okay, for our skill tree, this is how I set it up, and I will be putting in the link in the description also for my path of building. I would just go up here, take all the spell damage, and then go to my left here, and I will go down and take some of these that give spell damage and elemental damage early in the league, depending on which skill I'm going for. Then I would go up and take elemental overload, a great thing, and you might want to go with double wands or something like that, some more critical strike. Then I would go down, and when I'm getting winter orb, I would go down here. I would work my way down without the skill gems, these, because it's very hard to get in the beginning. I would get this increased skill duration, because it's very good to have those. And you can look my leveling tree, by the way, so which is my leveling setup. If you want more information, I've changed a little bit. And I will also go for the increased mana regeneration, because you might have some mana problem in the beginning. Then I would wander sideways here, and I would definitely pick up our channeling nodes. So you get some life there and everything. And then I would start wandering over all the way down here to face acrobatics, and then you are basically free to just pick up any straggling points, which is these. These are pretty good. And then you have the channeling skill here, which is great. Because you're already taking these, you can wander up here and get some Elipan, and finally go for singular focus. I'm not going to go into much detail here, because it's all dependent on what gear you have, and which one you are going to choose is basically what you're lacking in your build right now. You might be lucky with some drops, or you might be lacking some specific stat nodes or some resistance. Then you might want to go for those kind of things. If you have plenty of damage, then you might not just, why go for more damage? Why not go for more life and stuff like that? So it's hard for me to say, but this is my tree at the moment, and I've already changed it twice, and this is what I've ended up with. There might be some changes in the future, but I will update my path of building then in the description. So you might want to download that one and just take a look at it. For our Ascendancies, I would go with Shaper of Desolation first, because it gives us some great buffs in the early, and some chilling, shocking, and blah blah blah. And then I will go for Beacon of Ruin. It's 20% flat. Just make sure you have some lightning damage on your gear if you have this one, so you benefit from the shock. So there is Herald of Thunder or something like that. Pendulum Destruction is something people also go for first, but I honestly go this route, and because it increased elemental damage for 5 seconds there. And then finally go for Mastermind of Discord. This is the last one I always pick, because you want to stack the buffs and stuff like that later in the game, and you benefit more from it. So this one would be the last one. Paragon of Calamity is also good because we get Life Leech, we can drop a Warlord's Mark basically, and we also get the Reflect Immunity, which means we can run every map mod. But you can also run every map mod. You can always back into this. It's only 5 regret for it. So if you save up with a lot of Elemental Reflect, and then you can just respec out of this. It's 10 regret orb altogether to respec, and then respec back another 10. But also there's if you're running Sextants, there's a mod that is taking away the reflect damage on any mod. So if you save all those maps and just run Sextants constantly, you're gonna get to a point where you're gonna get those anti-reflect Sextant, and then you can just run all those maps, or 3 of those at least in one mod, and you don't need to go with this. So I would take away Beacon of Ruin honestly here if I was going for a Paragon of Calamity, because you can get the elemental focus on hit, elemental, what was it, focus skill of shocking. So that gives us 10%, not 20% though. So that might be something you want to look at. You can look at my old guides, because I was playing around with that, and I was using Paragon of Calamity because I had so much damage I did honestly don't need there. And yeah, those are my ascendancies. For my Pantheon, it's Soul of Lunaris, and I really need to put in some efforts into these. This is also something most people are using. It gives us dodge, avoid chaining, which is good for our, because we're standing far away, and reduce an extra movement speed. And yeah, this one is just great. So go for Soul of Lunaris, but I need to upgrade it. Also Soul of Shakari, not because of the first one. Well, of course, some chaos damage taken is good, but immune to poison is really good, because then we can just disregard the poison, everything that is poisoning us. So those are good choices here. For bandits, we want to just kill them all, honestly, because any of the other choices would be a negative for our build, because I know some people are picking Allura, which gives critical chance and some elemental resistance and so on, but we're not a crit build, and we don't need that. And 2 skill points are so good. I don't care what kind of stats you get, 2 skill points is always going to be better and give us more option in the end. So that's all I have for you. I probably missed out on a ton of things because I just wanted to make a fast guide, not an in-depth guide, because people probably don't want to hear me speak for an hour about this. I might make some different build guides in the future with a different kind of gear. So that means like maybe a crit version, or maybe a CI version, or some energy shield version and stuff like that. There's also a 10 curse Winter Orb setup that I want to try out also, so that would be interesting. But hope you liked it, and thank you, and please subscribe to my channel. Bye bye.